I suddenly realized that the gay rights movement that I had helped to found way back when was in serious trouble. And it had been sort of taken over by cuckoos who had actually perverted, I think I have to use that word, the whole movement that I had been so proud of. What are all these labels for? We can just manage without them, we can really manage without them. Do you want jeans and a t-shirt, or do you want a skirt on? What do you want to wear? We don't need to label, especially we don't need to label children. We really shouldn't. LGBT people are not united by any belief. We have a certain sexual orientation, which is towards people of the same sex or both sexes. That's it. People and all groups that call themselves LGBT, LGBTQ, LGBTQ plus, all this stuff, are united behind a belief.
Well, Bev Jackson, co-founder of the seminal LGB Alliance, what I would like, I was thinking, I'd be very interested in what you're thinking, Mia, but what I'd like is a few people that are listening to get to know you, how you came to be the co-founder of the LGB Alliance in 2019. It's a massive organization, such an important organization, but I haven't heard your backstory. I know that you were a co-founder of the United Kingdom Gay Liberation Front.
Well, not exactly. I like telling this story. I've told it a million times, so some people have to fast forward that when I was 11, I was at an antisemitic school, and we had this antisemitic teacher, and she was telling some joke about Jews, and at some point she said, I suppose nobody here is Jewish. And I had just started at the school and I had no friends, and I really wanted friends, but I thought, I decided I have to tell people. I didn't know what I was telling people because we were not religious at all. There was no candles on Friday evening or anything, but I just knew we were this thing. It was more of a label than anything else. So I put my hand up and I said, "Please, miss," and then I had to go to the bathroom and throw up. I always think that was the moment I became me, because I was really frightened, and yet. So I was really frightened, but I had to speak. And so that's sort of who I am. I'm sort of, it's not that I'm a real rebel and I just don't care. I do care. But if something has to be said, I will say it. So I came out as a lesbian at a fairly homophobic school when I was 15. And then when I was 18, I went to university, had my first relationship with a woman. And at university, I saw this sign saying first meeting of the UK Gay Liberation Front. And I knew that the word gay, that meant homosexual, and liberation, that was freedom, and front, that sounds a bit military. I was a real innocent. Although I was at LSE, the London School of Economics, I was actually studying math, and I didn't know anything about politics, really, nothing at all. But anyway, I went to that first meeting. And because I was the only woman there were 19 gay men and me. No transgender people. But there were 19 gay men and me.
And this is
so
1970.
This was 1970, yes, October 1970. So because I was the only woman, they put me on the steering committee, which was completely silly because I was just such, as I say, I was very naive. And so I was on the steering committee. And so I'm a founding member then, because I was one of the first members. And I was the spokesperson at the Highbury Fields March, the first march of the Gay Liberation Front of the UK in November 1970. And there's a little newspaper article about that where I say it's important to know that we're not ashamed to be homosexual. And for years and years and years, I thought, what a timid thing to say. We're not ashamed to be homosexual. Why didn't I say something, bolder? But anyway, and now it's turned out to be bold. So I didn't stay very long. I moved to the Netherlands in 1971, and I've been here ever since. And I thought things were going rather well. I mean, it seemed to be going fine. And in the Netherlands, of course, it was like 20 years ahead, and I never had any problem being a lesbian, no problem also bringing up children here, no problems at school. I did choose the schools carefully. That I thought there was less likely to be discrimination I just experienced no problems, and there was gay marriage, and the Netherlands was the first country in the world to introduce gay marriage. And then in 2016, I think it was was that your TV program, Stella?
That was 2018. My
Was
film
it?
came out.
Was it 2018? Well, I
Yeah,
had started to become aware of something going wrong
yeah.
with the gay rights movement in 2017. So I was very, very interested when I saw your program. And that was really the moment after you put that program out that I started tweeting. So
Oh,
that was, it was
really?
only, yeah. There's a couple of programs that really influenced me. So your program was one of them. I thought this is the moment that we're now going to start really making a fuss about that. The other one was a program that my friend Malcolm Clark was involved in, and this was a BBC Horizon program in the year 2000, and this was about apotomophilia. This is this weird, weird, weird fetish that some people have, or paraphilia, that they feel they've got too many limbs. They really should only have one leg. It's just make a mistake, have two legs, only one. Some people feel they shouldn't have any arms and legs. Anyway, and for just a very short time, there was at least one surgeon in Scotland who was willing to cut people's healthy legs off if they felt they had too many, and that was made illegal. And then I made some remark, as I was gradually becoming more aware of what was going on. I made a remark at Christmas 2016. I said among family and friends, people who want to cut their genitals off, it's the same sort of thing, isn't it, as people wanting to cut off a limb. And people were outraged. And everybody reacted with outrage as if I was saying something horrible. And I was really taken aback because it seemed to me rather obvious. And so that was when I really started studying. And as I say, when your program came out, I was particularly interested, and I got more and more interested. I remember the moment at which I discovered that it was not just adults, but that boys, minors, were wanting to have their genitals cut off, and I just thought this was just so terrible, and it seemed to be so regressive, and people were calling it progressive, which I thought I just couldn't wrap my head around that at all. And then I remember the moment I thought, my God, surely girls aren't doing it as well, are they? And then I started looking into that and discovering that girls were not only wanting to change their bodies, but were suddenly, or not suddenly, but had become the majority. And then I got really upset because these were girls like me. I mean, I had a boy's name. I always took boys' names. I mean, I wanted to be a boy. I mean, not every, but very many strong girls want to be boys because you've more freedom. You're not interested in all these flimsy things. I've never understood why would you wear shoes that you can't actually run in properly? Why would you wear clothes without pockets? Why would you? I mean, everything about girly things I found revolting and ridiculous, and I've never been interested in any of it. And I often took a boy's name, and I took different boys' names right into my 20s.
Oh, really?
And
What were your names?
At 3, I was Sam.
Okay.
And at 15, I think I was for William for a while. And then when I came to the Netherlands, when I was 19, 20, I was Paul, Poul, after Paul Anderson, who was my favorite science fiction writer at the time. Anyway.
And did wait, did your parents go with any of that, or did they ignore it?
I didn't have a relationship with my parents. I mean, so my father died when I was about 15, and my mother was, the less said about her, the better. So I didn't have a relationship with her. No, very, very, very dysfunctional family.
And could I ask one other thing, because it often comes up, and now you've brought it up, not about your family, but about names. And I know from back in the day, from my own memory, that it wasn't massively unusual for, let's say, a gay camp guy to be called she, or, playing around a bit with pronouns. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was not an issue because nobody was pretending that these people were women. It was a playful thing. I mean, like, I've never particularly disliked, I never used to dislike drag shows. I mean, I occasionally went to some drag shows. It's quite sophisticated sometimes, quite interesting, just messing about, and obviously, very obviously, adult entertainment. I understand the people who say that they were simply caricatures of women, and that's true. And in fact, I don't like it anymore. Maybe I wouldn't go to a drag show anymore, especially not, of course, since it's instead of just being seen as adult entertainment now, they have to be on the BBC every single day. I mean, God knows where they find all these drag queens to be on the BBC every day and going into schools and it's just completely nuts. And that is, I think, really, it's just so bad. Then there's just no excuse. It's just I've got just no good words for it. The whole idea of drag queens in schools and at children's events is ridiculous. So I don't feel very affectionate about drag anymore. But that it's true what you say, that certainly in the 70s it wouldn't have been an issue. In the 80s maybe.
That brings me to something that I was just talking about the other day with a friend, that like you're saying you've turned against drag that you once didn't have a problem with. Like, do you feel the same way about just men? Like I used to think, Eddie Izzard back in the day, men expressing themselves however they want, good for them, that's great, that's amazing. And now I have this reaction, this instant reaction towards a man in a dress, even if he's not pretending to be a woman. Do you feel that as well in
Well, no, I
wider
think
society?
there's a big difference. I mean, I'm much older than both of you. And in the 1970s and the 1980s, we loved androgyny. I mean, most of the guys, the cool guys, they had long hair. Women had hair of all sorts of lengths. It was just androgyny was great. Androgyny is great. And nobody was pretending to be the opposite sex. And there's a difference. You can see a difference now between a man who's just wearing a dress because he thinks it's rather a nice garment to wear and he looks good in it, and somebody who's putting it on. I don't want to immediately go down the AGP line, but in order to satisfy some particular sexual urge or to pretend that he's a woman, and you can tell the difference. And so, I mean, obviously, I think that kids should not be forbidden to anything you forbid a child to do. I mean, I forbade one of my children to play with Barbie dolls, and so they ended up playing with Barbie dolls somewhere else. I mean, what children do, what they want to do. There's not much point forbidding it unless it's dangerous.
Okay, so where are we up to in your story? Because I know we've talked about the first meeting of LGB Alliance.
So we got up to it in 2019. So
we didn't mention your book, your memoir.
So I mean, I've just been an old style lefty all my life. I mean, in the always fighting with progressive causes of, so when I came to Holland, I finished with gay rights because that was going very nicely, so I didn't need to worry about that. So I was fighting with anti-apartheid and women's reproductive rights, and I marched against the neutron bomb and war in Iraq, and I mean, it just went on and on and on. And in 2015, 2016, I was volunteering with refugees on the island of Lesbos in Greece, and I wrote a book about a month that I did volunteering with them, and that I published in 2016. And that's what I was doing until this happened, and I suddenly realised that the gay rights movement that I had helped to found way back when was in serious trouble. It had been sort of taken over by cuckoos who had actually perverted, I think I have to use that word, the whole movement that I had been so proud of. And it was just really upsetting. And I thought like most people do, as soon as you explain this to them, they'll think, oh yeah, I really need to change that. I met Kate Harris in April 2019 and discovered.
Did you know each other?
No, I was talking to somebody about these things, and she said, "Oh, you're talking exactly like my friend Kate Harris. I think you two had better meet." And so she introduced us, and we met on the phone, and then we met in London in July 2019, and it just became very obvious that we that we thought the same way. And so my background was as a founding member of the Gay Liberation Front. Her background was in Stonewall. She'd been very, very closely connected with Stonewall. She was a volunteer fundraiser for Stonewall. When she and her partner had their civil partnership, they asked for gifts to be given to Stonewall instead of getting gifts to themselves. I mean, they were really, really into Stonewall. And then when there was a need for a new CEO in 2014, there were various groups that met with the people with Ruth Hunt, who was wanting to be CEO. And they knew, Kate Harris knew, and the other lesbians knew, that there was a danger that with a new CEO, they might become LGBT, which they hadn't been. They'd always been LGB until 2015.
Wow.
And she knew that was a danger. And so and she's not the only one. Anya Palmer has said the same thing. Many other lesbians have said the same thing. And Ruth Hunt promised that she wouldn't add the T to the LGB when she became CEO, if she became CEO of Stonewall. And the second she became CEO, she reneged on that. She met with many trans organizations, and she received, I think it was 100,000 from Arcus, and to go down the trans route. And I refer to it as the gender identity route, because I think, especially for sexual orientation, it is just so traumatic what has happened. We all knew what sexual orientation is, right? I mean, what sexual orientation is. Straight people don't have any trouble knowing. It's when people are sexually attracted to people of the opposite sex. And nobody's actually really arguing about that. You won't find people trying to explain that heterosexuality isn't the same thing. If they do, people just ignore it. But they really have done a number on sexual orientation for gays and especially lesbians. And lesbians have absolutely been at the cutting edge of this. And that's why you find lesbians fighting back harder than anybody else, because we've been hit harder than anybody else. Because when they changed same-sex sexual orientation, which is what it means to be a gay or lesbian, to same-gender sexual orientation, gender being this new kind of gender, which is the feeling that you're male or female, then that basically gets rid of sexual orientation. It just deletes it, because so two guys who both think of themselves as women can be a lesbian couple. I mean, that's how nonsensical it is. It's just completely nuts, and lesbians have really, really been harmed by that more than anybody else, because it means that, I mean, if you have a lesbian dating site, you imagine an 18-year-old girl looking for her first girlfriend, and she finds 20%, 30%, 40% of the people on the lesbian dating site are men calling themselves women. I mean, of course, somebody older could just say, no, thank you, but it's not very easy for an 18-year-old to say, no, sorry, not interested. Or why not? And most people will be polite. I'm not trying to say that most of these people will be horrible, but some of them are, and some of them will be quite aggressive and want reasons. Well, why? What's wrong with me? Why don't you like me? And it's just horrible.
And it's the young lesbians. I've heard this from some, that they know that it's transphobic, or they know that it makes them a bad person to not accept these men into their dating pool. So some of them actually try, because it makes them a bad person not to. That's really dark.
Yeah, it's really dark. It's really dark. And also, I mean, I think and I'm sure you've both talked at various different times about the problem with the language that is used to describe all these things. So inclusive. It's also good and bad. It's as if we're all stuck in some giant computer game in which there's the goodies and the baddies, and the goodies are inclusive, and the baddies are not inclusive. But inclusive, sexual orientation is not inclusive, actually. No, if you're straight, you don't include people of the same sex. If you are a lesbian, you don't include men. No, it's not inclusive. Inclusive is not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes, you're not inclusive. You don't have everybody come into your house. No, you actually choose who comes into your house.
Or classrooms, or under 10s running competitions, every single thing, train tickets.
So this word inclusive is just, chuck it out the window. It's a complete, I'm all for diversity. I think that's interesting. People are diverse, as long as we mean diversity of opinion as well as other kinds of diversity. That's great. But and one of the things that really shocks me most is this thing called gender non-conforming. And I've heard both of you talk about this as if this is a thing. This is not a thing.
I've heard you say
This
it's not a thing.
This is not a thing. Please,
go.
I would never, ever use the word gender non-conforming unless I put it in inverted commas. Because what is it? What is it? It's ridiculous. You are using this phrase, gender non-conforming, is suggesting that some people do conform to what? Basically.
Can I ask you a couple of questions? So, how would you differentiate between a woman who looks stereotypically feminine and a woman who looks stereotypically masculine? What would be the words you would use?
I would say it like that.
Well, therefore, what's the difference in using
I don't know. Some women are a bit butch, and some women are a bit more femme. I don't know. It's. People dress the way they want and behave the way they want. And I don't like femininity. I just don't like it. It always. I've just had a bit of.
Saying a 3-year-old is butch or a 6-year-old is butch or femme would feel unusual to me.
Well, I just don't see why you need these labels. What are all these labels for? We can just manage without them, We can really manage without them. Do you want jeans and a T-shirt or do you want a skirt on? What do you want to wear? We don't need to label, especially we don't need to label children. We really shouldn't. And one of the things, I feel so strongly about this because I don't know if you've been following my Substacks about this terrible, terrible New York podcast, The Protocol.
I want to talk about that.
Oh, you're brilliant on it.
Yeah, I wrote about it too.
Yeah.
Well, so this woman, is it Laura Edwards-Leeper, who's supposedly the moderate, because she thinks you ought to be very, very careful before you decide to give someone puberty blockers. She's not a moderate. And one of the things she wrote about is about medicine for gender non-conforming children. What the? No. Kids. Actually, you know what I call them, Stella? I call them unconventional. That's
okay,
what
lovely.
I call them. Unconventional. Unconventional. Some children are more unconventional than others. That's what we call them. And we don't.
You with that.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I completely disrupted the narrative about the beginnings of LGB Alliance. But
actually, could I just interject for a moment? So, because I had an experience I did an event with Peter Boghossian with this man who I disagreed with for many, 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 many hours, and then he invited me on his podcast. And I did almost 4 hours of podcast interviews with him, and I talked to him, and at the end of it, he released the podcast, and he called me the Anita Bryant of the anti-trans movement. And when he did that, I had this moment of, goodness me, like he listened to me for hours, and he still thinks that I'm like a raging homophobe from the 1970s. And I realized that there are some people out there who still to this day do not understand why the T is an attack on the LGB. What can you crystallize it? Can you distill it so that somebody who really has no idea, like this man, understands why the T is such an attack on the LGB?
Okay, so basically, there is no such thing as the LGBTQIA+ community. It's just a myth. These are all separate things. It's hard enough, to be quite honest, keeping lesbians together with gay men and bisexuals. Each of those groups has their own, special needs and tend to be more this than that. And but we do it at LGB Alliance because we think it's important, because what we have in common is sexual orientation. That's what we have in common. We don't have any beliefs in common. Some of the people might be quite right-wing. Some people might be quite left-wing. I don't know. Some people might be religious. Some people, most of us, I think, are probably atheists. Who cares? It doesn't matter. We are not, LGBT people are not united by any belief. we have a certain sexual orientation, which is towards people of the same sex or both sexes. That's it. T people and all groups that call themselves LGBT, LGBTQ, LGBTQ plus, all this stuff, are united behind a belief. What they have in common is they believe in gender identity. They believe that everybody has a gender identity which may be separate from their sex and which takes priority over their sex. And they may go as far as Chase Strangio, who's completely the most insane person in this area, but I've heard the same things from Stonewall UK, that a penis is not a male body part, and there's no such thing as a male body or a female body. I mean, that you can't get much crazier than that. But that is the core of the belief system that all LGBTQIA plus organizations follow. And the reason why they don't belong together is that our interests clash. As I was saying before, if lesbians want to have a lesbian app or a lesbian social evening or a lesbian club or whatever, and they wish to be just with other lesbians, the people, the T and the Q, don't just get me started on the Q, but will believe that it should be inclusive, and therefore that they should be included. And so those interests are obviously clashed. They are opposed to each other. And you see this fought out at the United Nations, where Reem Al-Salem valiantly stands up for lesbians as well as just for women, whereas the SOGI, that sexual orientation and gender identity person, independent expert at the United Nations, actually is always pro-inclusive and anti the demands and the rights of lesbians and gay men, because they're not inclusive, and in fact they're transphobic. This ridiculous word, which is just used to shut people up. It doesn't mean anything.
And there's a medical angle to it as well that I've heard you talk about.
For the kids. So it's been documented in many, many studies that most kids who are unconventional, so gender non-conforming in scare quotes, would grow up, are likely to grow up gay or lesbian or bisexual. I don't agree with those who say you should just leave them alone. No, you shouldn't leave them alone, because if they are in distress when they are in puberty and they're discovering their sexual orientation, especially if they've got homophobic parents or surroundings or whatever, they may be in distress. And a lot of these kids who are distressed have comorbidities, as we know, autism spectrum and anxiety, depression, and so on, maybe loss in the family, maybe a history of abuse. There's many, many, many different things. But one of the things is sexual orientation. And at the moment, these kids who are struggling with all these things are very, very likely to end up, especially in the in North America, and less so now in Europe, but not everywhere, likely to end up in a medical pathway that is, and we can talk about how terrible that is, about how they've been sold lies about puberty blockers being safe and reversible. They're not safe and reversible, and they're not necessary. And they're not only not necessary, but they're just, I think Jamie's now calling it a crime scene. You've seen the LGBT Courage Coalition has been demonstrating outside Boston Children's Hospital and elsewhere. And they're saying, we've got to stop talking about gender affirming care as care, because nobody wants to ban care. The evil bigots, they want to ban care. How bad is that? You've got these poor kids born in the wrong body, and these horrible, horrible bigots want to ban their care. It's the words that are used that are wrong. Stopping someone's puberty is not care. It is not any kind of care. Therefore, puberty is a necessary thing, quite often painful and nasty to go through. It's the way children become adults. Blocking it is not care. We have to stop using these words.
I agree. I think we actually have to get good words to describe. I think gender affirming care is a terrible, terrible, invasive, radical, irreversible treatment that's causing huge harm. And we have to get better phrases ourselves, because the branding, arguably from the LGBTQ plus world, is phenomenal. That they do seem to understand marketing and branding. I wonder, just on the point, there's a couple of points I'm trying to ask you about. One of them is, why do you think that the majority of unconventional children grow up to be gay and lesbian? Why?
I'm not sure that's the right way to look at it. I mean, it might just be that we know gay and lesbian adults, we remember that we didn't want to conform to whatever patterns seemed to be being pushed or thought of as more acceptable, and feeling attracted to people of the same sex is also an unconventional approach to relationships. But I don't think it matters why. So some people think you were born gay. Mostly people who want to believe that, I think, because otherwise they'll think, they'll feel guilty. I think that other people will say, it's a question of nurture or it's nature and nurture mixed together. And people like me are saying, I just don't care. It's not interesting. Some people are gay, some people are straight, some people are bisexual. I know Stella's thinking, I want to know why, but I don't want to know why, because I just, no, that's.
I have another question off the top of my head, and we're swinging wildly now, but I might as well go in. You said a throwaway comment that my ears pricked up immediately. Ruth Hunt, something like 2015, making a promise and immediately reneging on it. And yes. I wonder, did she make it in good faith? What were your thoughts about that? Or what is the kind of the word on the street about that? And she got 100,000, did you say, from Arcus? And was it motivated financially?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is a story of so many organizations. Once you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, you've got this big staff, and you've got to find something else to do.
Oh, wait, so you don't think she meant it when she said she won't add the tea, or do you think she meant it and then they offered £100,000 and she suddenly changed her mind?
Wait for the book.
Okay.
I do. I think she is an absolute. She's done more damage to the gay rights movement in the UK than anyone I know. That was what I can say, because she took over an organisation that was a good organisation for many, many years. It really did a lot for gay rights.
And does careerism cover it?
Sorry?
Is this careerism?
You know where she is now? She's in the House of Lords.
Yeah.
That's what. So she destroyed the lives. This is how I see it. That she, through her organisation, destroyed the lives of many, many, many young gay and lesbian teenagers, and now she's in the House of Lords. So. I find it deeply, deeply, deeply upsetting, and not just her, because of course she set the trend, and so what Stonewall said, all these other, and there's so many satellite organisations all around the UK, and they all just it followed along with Stonewall. You couldn't question it. Because. And it was just, and LGBT, young gay and lesbian teens had just nowhere to turn, because everything was trans. It was just like we'd gone backwards, and now we have gone further backwards than we ever were before.
GenSpec's Bigger Picture conference series returns for its 4th landmark international event this September, the 27th and 28th, Saturday and Sunday, in Albuquerque in New Mexico. At this time, we're not just analysing problems, we're shaping the solution. We're looking for a way forward, and we've chosen the best speakers, the best leading thinkers of our generation to discuss how we can move the dial. With the theme Live Not by Lies, Conversation for a Culture in Crisis, this year's conference tackles one of the most urgent challenges of our time: how to speak truth in the face of conformity, confusion, and institutional pressure. As the politicisation of sex and gender continues to divide societies and derail thoughtful discourse and destroy loving and engaged families, this groundbreaking counterpoint to WPATH brings together the world's leading thinkers, clinicians, policymakers, lawyers, politicians, and psychologists to forge a path that is ethical, evidence-based, and grounded in reality. Abigail Schreier will expose the hidden consequences of bad therapy. Dr. Lisa Littmer will present her latest groundbreaking research. Lionel Shriver lays bare how society's fixation on trans identity distorts truth and undermines fundamental freedoms. Peter Boghossian will present Truth Over Lies, bold conversations in a fractured culture. Dr. Patrick Lappert will discuss the impact of trans surgery, while Dr. Quinton van Meter will discuss the impact of hormones. Following defining events in Killarney, Ireland, in Denver, Colorado, in Lisbon, Portugal, we're now coming to Albuquerque in New Mexico. This is more than just a conference, it's a call to action. Join us for 2 days of unflinching honesty, rigorous evidence and solution-focused collaboration. It's time to move the dial and you need to be in the room. Visit genspec.org to secure your place.
I remember you saying in Lisbon, you closed your speech, it was so good. You said something like, trying to get the mainstream media to understand that this medical crime is not just being committed against gay and lesbian youth primarily, but that all of the organizations that once fought for gay rights are its biggest cheerleaders. It's so completely crazy that you can't reach people.
Yeah, you can't. If you tell people that the biggest danger to young gay, to gay and lesbian teens comes from the organizations which once people won't believe it. It just sounds, how could it be? They don't believe it. It's just basically transphobia is the opposite of homophobia. They're opposites, and kids just have no language anymore to express what they feel. I was just reading this horrible story about this girl who was a lesbian and this guy who she liked at school, as they were good friends, and he decided he was a transgender, so he was a girl now, and he managed to persuade her that they could be a lesbian couple, and she felt that she should go along with that because otherwise it would be so transphobic. And I mean, this is the kind of pressure that is being brought to bear on young people because they have so few resources and not enough role models. I mean, thank God for Martina Navratilova.
She's wonderful.
But she's wonderful, but she's quite rare. There's not many. I mean, that silly blue-haired lesbian footballer, what's her name? Megan, whatever it is, Rapinoe, yeah. And all those people who would have got nowhere if they had had to compete against men, are refusing to be good role models for young lesbians growing up today. And I think it's just absolutely tragic. And this is one of the reasons, so let's go back to 2019. It was our fury at Ruth Hunt's betrayal and our anguish for the teenage lesbians above all, but also young gay boys, who are also being drawn into this and told that they might be girls, that made us decide that we needed to found LGB Alliance. So we founded it. We had a secret meeting on October 22nd, 2019, with 70 people. Each one of the people we phoned separately to make sure that they were okay and that they would not betray the name, the place, the venue we were meeting. And, lots of people were there. Helen Lewis was there, Kathleen Stock was there. Lots of people were there at this inaugural meeting. And we sort of thought, I mean, we're oldies, we're getting on a bit, we thought, okay, this is obviously needed. It's obviously a good idea. And once we get this started, other people will take over. And it took us about 24 hours to realize, nobody's going to do it. We have to do it. We have to do it ourselves. And we were completely flooded with messages from all over the world. People saying, thank you. When are you going to start up in New Zealand? Are you going to come to Canada? When are you going to? As if we were already a big organization. It was just me and Kate. And we had no money. We had no backers. It was just our idea. We just worked 24/7. We worked 24/7 from July 2019 until mid 2021. I mean, we just never stopped. And other people were, we did build up a team. We did build up a team, and one of the most important person who came on board with us and who stayed with us for many years was Malcolm Cloud, who is absolutely passionate about safeguarding, and he's an unbelievably good researcher. And his Substack also is very, very well worth following. And he really delves into history and brings out some extraordinary connections. And so we had him.
Still in the LGB Alliance?
No, he isn't working in LGB Alliance anymore. I think he prefers. He left a couple of years ago. He has more freedom. I think he's got a slightly different tone. I think from LGB Alliance, he's often very fierce when he follows people, and we are a registered charity. So we are obviously bound by the rules of charities, and quite rightly so. And he has now a little bit more freedom, I think, to express himself more fiercely than would be appropriate for a charity.
He's a brilliant writer. When you I love his work. When you formed the LGB Alliance, I'm interested in the acronym LGB. I'm interested in the kind of I knew it as gay rights and then gay and lesbian rights. Did you decide it was going to be primarily lesbian, or was it just because of you and Kate that it feels primarily lesbian? Or tell me about all that.
Okay, so we decided from the start that we wanted it to be men and women. That was really important from the beginning, but it was also important that it was lesbian-led. And I think it was me that felt that leaving bisexuals out would seem artificial, especially so many women are bisexual, or maybe start off bisexual and then gravitate more to lesbianism. Or that it's women's sexuality in that sense is perhaps a little bit more fluid in any sense. The way that they experience it is a bit more fluid. But anyway, I thought, but the name. I mean, I just said to Kate, we've got to have a name. How about LGB Alliance? And she said, oh, well, all right, we can use that for now, but we can change it later. And, and then it stuck because of the extraordinary reaction. There were so many thousands of messages that that for years we didn't even look at them. We couldn't. It was just, so on the one hand, many, many, many messages of support and thanks and requests for help, and on the other hand, of course, that we were deluged by messages saying trans women are women, trans women are women. I think 6 times or 6.5 times you could just do in a tweet, as many times as you could fit in a tweet. And then also somebody called Christine Burns, who's a trans-identified male who's been quite influential in the trans rights organization Press for Change, and said within 24 hours of us forming, LGB Alliance is a hate group, pass it on. And that was, and Christine Burns had quite a lot of followers. Owen Jones, who had 1 million followers, immediately took that up. And so within a week, within a couple of days, all over the internet, they were saying LGB Alliance is a hate group, and we hadn't done anything. We had just had a little meeting. Wow. And, that's the stress of suddenly, it's very odd. When you've fought left-wing causes all your life and suddenly you're being called all these names, it's very disorienting. But it's also, you start looking back and I realized how lazy I had been. If you asked me around 2015 what my politics were, I would say, I'm a Guardian reader. And I don't know what I meant exactly by that. I just thought, okay, the Guardian is my paper. The things I know about, I agree that I see them, and the things I don't know about, I assume that what I read in The Guardian is probably the right way to think about them. And so that was my political identity, that paper. And I thought I knew the Telegraph is horribly right-wing. You should never, ever look at that. It will infect you. And the Daily Mail is absolutely horrible, horrible, horrible paper. That's just a tabloid and it's full of lies and sensationalism, horrible, horrible. But as long as we stick to The Guardian, then we'll be okay. And I just realized that kind of tribal thinking that I had, and that actually maybe most people have, and it's really difficult to let go and suddenly realize that you actually have to read lots of different things, and that you'll find someone with whom you violently agree on one thing and violently disagree on something else, which is quite difficult to process. It's much harder living like that, but that is the way that we should be living. And, critically evaluating, we could all disagree about things, and that's fine, isn't it? Disagreeing is actually fine.
Yeah.
There used to be a tradition in the UK, and I don't know whether it still is, that teach debating clubs where you would be assigned a point of view and you would have to defend it, and or you would have to defend a point of view that you violently disagree with.
Yeah.
And it's just such an important skill to be able to just see what other people think and to be able to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, if you ask me to, argue on behalf of people who believe in gender identity, I'm sure I'll give it my best shot.
Can we leap to the time that a charity for so-called trans children, Mermaids, tries to strip you? You get charitable status, which is you deserve it, and then a trans charity tries to strip you of it. Because I think we've got Bev v. Marshall, which is the case in Alabama where they tried to block Alabama's ban on youth gender medicine. And
that wasn't a good idea, was it?
WPATH, we got all of those emails from WPATH, and it's the most spectacular own goal in the gender war, except perhaps for when Mermaids tried to strip you of your charitable status. Can you just give us a brief summary of what that was, and just how did it feel to be in that courtroom or legal setting?
So this isn't, in a sense, this isn't really about Mermaids. It's about a certain tax lawyer called Jolyn Warm, who has wanted to bring us down from the beginning. And he there was a petition against us getting charitable status, and that went for ages. And then they were furious that we got charitable status. And then after we got charitable status, Jolyn Warm tweeted, I think I found a way to get to strip them of it. He wanted to find a group that he thought would be able to challenge the charitable status. And so he went into league with Susie Green, who's this, as you know, one of these trans mothers who's made so many people's lives miserable, so many children's lives miserable, although I don't know how her own child is doing now. Anyway, they went into league, and so it was Mermaids then that tried to get our charitable status withdrawn. So their original case, Mermaids' case, backed by Jolyn Moore, was not against us, but it was against the Charity Commission. The case was, they said that the Charity Commission should never have given us charitable status because we're really just transphobic bigots and we're not a charity at all, or something like that. And then they sort of changed their tack a little bit halfway through and decided that they couldn't call us a charity because we were too political, or I don't know. But anyway, they just did everything. But the funny thing was that it was a huge own goal, because the three witnesses that they produced, I mean, they were just, it looked as if they'd tumbled out of bed and found themselves in the courtroom, and that they'd been told they had to argue something, and they didn't have a clue. They were the most clueless. They were the most ridiculous, funny. I mean, whereas we prepared for hours and hours and hours. I had a witness statement with 200 pages of exhibits, and it was just we prepared so well for that. And so so there was this guy who leads something called LGBT Consortium. He probably can't find another job, so he's just been doing that for ages. And he kept saying, in answer to all sorts of questions like, "Are men, generally taller than women?" I'm not an expert. Would you say that 80% is more than 50%? I'm not an expert on statistics. Anyway, so he was a really, really funny character. But and then their second witness was John Nicholson. This is ridiculous. The person. If you imagine what pompous looks like, you think, what does pompous look like? You look at John Nicholson, and he strutted into the corner. My favourite moment of John Nicholson was, I know what a lesbian is.
And he doesn't.
Certainly didn't. So, in fact, his words were so ridiculous, I think they were completely struck from the record, and the judges just disregarded them. They weren't struck from the record, but I don't think the judges I think it was so obvious that he didn't know what he was talking about, and he was just... And the only serious witness they had was the chair of the board of Mermaids, who obviously had no idea what her CEO was doing, because she said that, Mermaids does not give medical advice. And meanwhile, Susie Green had been going to the JIDs, at the Tavistock JIDs, and constantly with letters and emails and phone calls with them all the time. But the chair didn't know about this either. She didn't know, or anyway. But no, we don't give medical advice at all. And I think my favourite quote from her was that she's not sure that children are born with a sex. So I mean, I mean, these people were just they were so ridiculous But what this did for us, and this was a long case. It was 5 days and then another 7 days, 7 days in which we heard this rubbish, and then we heard our statements. And I was quite sort of methodical and systematic at showing that we are for LGB people. That is what we are. We're a charity to help LGB people, and we are not anti-trans. I mean, we were not set up to oppose anybody. In fact, when we started off, we said, let's never talk about trans people, because after all, that's not our thing, is it? Our thing is LGB people, so we won't talk about them. Oh yes. So we were never set. The idea that we were set up that we set up something to oppose anybody, or to hate somebody, or to get rid of somebody, or to tell people they didn't exist, all this stuff, just complete nonsense. We really just felt there was a need for an organisation for gays and lesbians and gays and lesbians and bisexuals, because all the other organisations which used to do that not only didn't do it, but were actually undermining our rights. So we felt, okay, so we've got to do what we did before. We've just got to have a new LGBT rights organisation. And we were able to explain that in court. I was a bit more kind of businesslike about it. And Kate produced what was the most dramatic moment of the entire trial, when the poor barrister who was for Mermaids, I mean, he was we smiled at him at lunch. You've got to do your job, right? You've got to do this job. He was a nice man, really, but he said that to Kate, you realise that some people may have a different idea of what a lesbian is, and she lost it. I mean, she just got so upset, and she said, "You mean that some lesbians have a penis?" And she broke down in court because she was so absolutely fed up with hearing this rubbish. And it was an iconic moment. Yeah.
It was absolutely gorgeous. She really expressed herself, even though she was so distressed by it. She expressed herself so well that I know I was crying, and I'm sure thousands and thousands of others were crying listening to her. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, I'm so proud of her, because the emotion that she feels, and she does feel it, and that she was able to express there, I think it really got through. And this was such an extraordinary trial that it inspired an American filmmaker to actually take the transcript and make it into a play, which he then filmed, and you can actually watch it on YouTube. It's amazing, because their arguments are not normally tested, but in court you could hear just how ridiculous everything they said was, so ridiculous, and everything we said made sense. So, but we did. Obviously we won that. We retained our charitable status, and the court had given us the opportunity to present our arguments in a way that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So, yeah, I'm glad it was a bit of a no. And then, of course, Mermaids was investigated.
Yes. That's the cherry on top. Mermaids ended up under investigation by the Charity Commission. Am I right?
Yeah,
because of this. That's the spectacular.
Well, not because of this, but because that Mermaids, having sought the spotlight by attacking suddenly people started looking at what Mermaids had been doing, and then they were discovering things like sending girls binders behind their parents' back and things like that, and some recommendations to Discord servers which were not being monitored, or where they would meet disreputable people. So there were all sorts of things that were going on, and also spreading lies about puberty blockers. And they were admonished at the they were admonished at the end of the investigation to make sure that their words were in line with the Cass review. I mean, of course, the one thing that I'm not happy about with the Cass review is the notion of a clinical trial, because it is really hard to see how that could possibly be ethical. We know so much about the harms of puberty blockers and especially cross-sex hormones, and we know that puberty blockers always lead to cross-sex hormones, and it's just why do we need a clinical trial of this? You can have
How's that going? Has it got ethics board approval? Do we even know?
No, it doesn't.
Well,
But £10 million supporting it, so the likelihood is, from what I hear on the ground, is that it will go ahead because of that.
Okay.
But there will be plenty of pushback if it tries to go ahead. There will be.
I mean, we keep asking, obviously, about the ethics committee because it's supposed to all such clinical trials, but they're not calling it a clinical trial. They're calling it something else.
Study.
They're calling it a study, which is possibly a way to circumvent the need for an ethics committee. I don't know.
No, they need their ethics. But I want to ask a question. We put out in the Substack that we were interviewing. We did this for the first time today. The illustrious Bev Jackson. Anybody have a question? And there was a poignant question came in. Now, we only did it a few hours before we organised this interview, but it was a poignant question that I'd like you to unpack. It was a gay man saying, well, what does Bev think about Ray Blanchard's kind of typology, where he said there was autogynephiles and then there was homosexual transsexuals. And
I mean, I've only spoken to Ray once. His view then, and this was a few years ago, was that in the West, let me get this right, that it was mostly that most FDM people, MTF, I mean, were AGP, whereas it was more in Oriental countries, other non-Western countries, that you find more people who are gay. And obviously, I mean, Ray Blanchard is controversial in various contexts. Not in this context, I think. I mean, I think he's done a lot of very interesting work there in his whole, studies. He's studied these behaviours for longer than most people. And
arguably the homosexual, transsexual kind of, as the person who asked the questions, that it kind of legitimizes internalized homophobia within a person.
Well, yes, I mean, there is, when I was growing up, one of the cruelest things you could say to a supposedly effeminate boy is, oh, you're a girl, you're just like a girl. I mean, it's horrible. It was cruel then, and it's cruel now to say that because you act in a certain unconventional way, that you're therefore the opposite sex. And obviously, it's not the same thing. And people who try and pretend that girls who want to be or think themselves as boys and boys who think themselves or want to be girls, that these are equivalent, are completely wrong. There are huge differences there as to because of the way that men and women are in society. I'm a real feminist. I'm not sure. I know that Stella says she's not a feminist. I don't know about you, May. Are you a feminist?
I don't think I can call myself a feminist.
I find that so strange because for me, I mean, I'm an absolutely very. I'm not a radical feminist. But I'm very much a feminist in the way I view the world. So I do see patriarchal structures. I see the ways in which girls are socialized to be kind, which is, I think, one of the biggest problems that we have to deal with in the things that we're fighting. Girls are socialized to be kind, which is, of course, good. We want our kids to be kind to people in their surroundings. But the way this phrase has been used, to be kind to people who say there's something they obviously aren't, has been incredibly damaging. So yeah, I find it very odd to hear that you're not feminist.
In my defense, let me just say, in my defense, I probably am some kind of feminist, but I don't know how to identify. I don't know which label to choose. But I just have this problem because I was a stay-at-home mother, and I chose to be a stay-at-home mother, and I had this that people viewed me as a lesser person because I didn't have a career. They looked at me like a 1950s housewife. How could you possibly betray feminism and make the choice to stay at home like I was chained to the kitchen sink or something? And so I have an aversion.
Until what age? Until what age did you stay?
I did a full 9 years with my children. I have 3 children, so it was into my late 30s that I was a stay-at-home mom.
Until what age of the children, I mean?
Oh, the kids were all fully in school. So my youngest was, I think he was 5 when I went back into the workforce. but in that time, people didn't seem to value me because I had chosen to stay at home with my children. I didn't even really register for people. And I did feel a kind of, you're betraying feminism by choosing to, like, I was some kind of trad wife, and that made me turn against feminism.
I can understand that. I was pretty fierce about stay-at-home mums. And that's because one of the things that has always been most important for me is to set an example for my kids. I hope that if they are happy about the kind of life I lead, that would inspire them to follow in my path in certain ways. I just wanted to set a good example. And if you set a wonderful example as a stay-at-home mum, that will incline your daughters to think that they want to also be stay-at-home mums. And I just don't believe that that's a good example to set. I think that we need we need society to be run by women as well as men. And we need women as well as men to step up and take leadership roles. And it's very, very difficult to do that if you spend longer than a year or two. You disrupt your career for longer than a year or two to actually take leadership roles, and it helps to perpetuate the patriarchy. So I'm one of those horrible women who said to you, especially women who, what did you study, Mia?
I studied education. I was a teacher.
Yeah. So in that case, I got cross once with a woman who had studied medicine, because and she then became a stay-at-home mum, because I thought, we've all paid for you to become a doctor. And not only, are you wasting that education because you were trained to be a doctor and you're not being a doctor, but also you're not setting an example to your kids. So I was one of those horrible women. I'm one of those horrible feminists who said, no, you've got to step up and be a strong, show your girls that it's possible to be a good mother. Because I think motherhood is incredibly important. Motherhood is absolutely the most important thing I've ever done. I brought up 2 daughters, and it's absolutely the most important thing. Of course it is. But I also think I've managed to combine it with careers. I mean, I had to choose a different career, because I was, when I first became pregnant, I was teaching at the university. And that was a difficult thing to combine, I found, with motherhood. So I switched careers and became a translator, because then it was possible to, translate after, in up until the early hours, and it was an easier career to manage.
I take a slightly different view. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mother, and I was a stay-at-home mother insofar as I worked from home, and mothering was the most important.
I heard you say the other day that you found it very boring.
Yeah, well, I'm not yet finished the sentence, but I nearly chewed my own leg off with boredom. But I was, insofar as I was at home working, I still work from home. So when you're at home working, there's an easiness because you're around the kids and you organize your timetable around the kids. So I've always been at home, although I've always I was working a lot, But I tried to be just not working, because I believed in the cause of one parent working, one parent not working. That's what I believe in for children, but my ability to execute that was limited. So I kind of started working from home, still with the cause in mind that I was at home and my kids were there and they were.
It's funny. So our cause in the Netherlands, I mean, obviously you have to remember I'm Dutch. So in the Netherlands, it's very much easier to work part-time than I think it is in most countries. So, it's just my elder daughter and her husband always work part-time, shared childcare responsibilities. And that is the ideal among sort of progressive people here. Is that childcare should be shared, and both parents should work part-time if at all possible, or at least, but that it's all definitely a shared responsibility, and that also shows kids that fathers also can be caring fathers, and if in straight relationships, So yeah, Amia's looking awfully fierce at me now.
I know. I just want to say there is something lovely about the ease of the stay-at-home parent, as in I don't have to be there. I remember, like, I did work from home, But, my schedule, I knew I'd have to do something. And I think it brings attention to the home. I think ideally, if society could support a parent at home, I think we'd all be better off. But
Yeah,
But I just really, really. But do you not think that society ought to be run by women as well as men, or do you think it's fine if men are all in
I
the
think
leadership
women
positions?
women as well as men. But
How
I
are they
think
going to
women
do that?
are.
But how are they going to do that if they spend all these years working, staying at home? It just doesn't work.
I think you can, though. I think women can do the motherhood thing, and then look at what I did. Like I got a whole new my life took a total pivot. I didn't just stay at home mum. I then did homeschooling. I fully homeschooled my 3 kids as well. But there's something when I look back, even when I had 3 quite close together, but even when they were in school, the older 2 were in school, we still had the summer holidays, which are 10 weeks long here in Ottawa. And, we swam every day. We were at the lake. We have these gorgeous memories of their summer holidays. Whereas all of my working friends, 2 parents working, the kid goes to one camp and then another camp and then another, and they have no summer holidays, and it stresses them out because they're constantly moving around all these camps and stuff. Whereas we just had the magical summers that my guys are going to look back on, and I'm going to look back on for the rest of my life as
Well, I
being
think I just
incredibly
remember
precious.
I remember my daughter going off to camp. And it was an absolutely magical camp. It was this extraordinary place in the country with this lesbian couple who had all these horses, and they taught the kids to ride horses and to stand on horseback and all sorts of terrible things I didn't want to hear about. And this was absolutely magical. And of course, you have to choose camps nicely. You want your kids to be in nice places where they're going to make friends and it's going to be interesting stuff. And theatre camps and musical camps and just wonderful camps. So I don't know what you mean. You're not sending them to concentration camps. You're sending them.
Well, here it's like 10 weeks. So you get like a 1-week camp. And I'm not talking camp in the country. I'm talking glorified daycare in the city where they go
That's
and
horrible.
they're bored and they're, and they have to
and
meet new kids every week. And some kids will thrive if they're really social, but I have one child who definitely would not, because he doesn't make friends easily, and that would just be a massive stress for him. Anyway,
Yeah,
I think I'm taking
we're a bit off topic. No,
we better close it up. But in Ireland, we have 12 weeks for the summer holidays, and I remember a parent sending her kid to a new camp every week because she was working, and it did seem relentless. Like, that's 12 camps.
Yeah,
I remember
we only have 6 weeks summer holiday, and usually the parents will take off 3 or 4 weeks, so it's only 2 weeks to bridge with camps, and I think it works fine.
Oh my God, we could do a whole episode of this, but it was fascinating talking to you, and maybe we should. Maybe we really should.
This would be a good topic for a podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're supposed to be talking about LGBT issues.
We've way overrun, but it was really, really, really interesting talking to you.
Okay, really enjoyed it. And to all listeners, I'd just like to say, please don't say LGBTQ plus anymore. LGB is about sexual orientation. TQ plus is about various identity issues. And if you just keep to that distinction, their interests are often they're different and they often clash. So please just say LGB and separate it from TQ plus, and that will help all young gay and lesbian teens growing up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev.